Right, and it is completely unlawful. That's another thing. One of the things I've done, but many other people did it, before me, and I must say, a little bit better than me. But we contacted the IRS and basically said, well, what authority does the IRS have? This is an unconstitutional tax. It's unapportioned. It's an unapportioned tax. Every tax constitutionally has to be apportioned.
Wow.
And it's nothing but the collection arm of the Bank for International Settlements in the United States and the Federal Reserve Bank, which also is owned, but also owns the Bank for International Settlements.
Let's take this caller. Caller, you're on the air with Chris Dorsey.
Yes, I have thoroughly enjoyed this program today.
Yes.
And I'm wondering now that all of this has been exposed to the people, because what can we do as a people? Because there is strength and unity, and the money is with the people who think that they have the power right now, and if they have the money, they do have the power. So, you're arming us with good information, but as a people together, what can we accomplish with this?
But there's only one. Now, let me say this too, Chris. You can answer that, but let me say this to her because that's a great question.
Yeah.
First of all, you have a certain amount of power, no question. But I believe the real power rests in the information and the ability to move on the information. Because you can have money, but if you don't have knowledge,
Yeah.
you see what that gets you. Because some folks have limited monetary, access, but that's besides the point. The point is the people have to be educated. And then they have to make a decision that they're not going to just go watch the ball game after hearing this, that they're going to begin to support. And how do you begin to support? You find people who have this same mission in hand, and you said it when you said unity. But the problem is there's so few. So few, and then out of the few that know, there's an even fewer number that will stand flat-footed and do anything or take, because you're going to suffer repercussions when you're dealing with this. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk, and I want to say this to you, sister. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the repercussions. Listen, I've told people time and time again, when they tell you people have died for certain reasons, it's all smokescreen. I am a firm believer that Dr. Martin Luther King is dead, not for black people, not because he helped blacks. I'm a firm believer he died because he stuck his nose in war. And when he was such a powerful man that when he started to call for war, there he's messing with Federal Reserve bankers, and they will off you. I know that the founding fathers of this country were against, many of them were against central banking. Thomas Jefferson said that it would be better to go to war with an army than to deal with a central banking system. So the Rothschild. Listen, we're going to talk, but we have to continue to educate, sister, and then you can't let it die. After Chris goes off and we leave, you can't let it die. It's time to support this type of stuff. Listen, there's no reason why this radio station shouldn't be taken care of. Some of you out there who are listening to me should have been come down here, because this is your access to hearing this kind of information. And I'm telling you right now, there's no reason why Preston Brown, why we should be here. There shouldn't be anything leaking in here. There shouldn't be no late bills. There shouldn't be none of that, because who else is going to let the people talk but this crazy man, Preston Brown? And I'm going to applaud him because he's crazy enough to let people come in here while he's running for office, which some people would call a political a terrible thing to do. But he told me when he comes in here, long as he tell the truth, let him talk. And I'm not trying to get kudos with Preston, because Preston don't care if his name is mentioned. I need to tell the truth.
You cost me $22,000 when you came.
I ain't going with that. But listen, he said I cost him $22,000 when I came, but I don't know about that. I'll say this. He lets us talk. And let me tell you, the beginning of everything starts with information, and then the transformation, the usage of that information, so that Chris Dorsey ain't the only one down at the city council meeting getting hauled off. It's going to be a whole lot harder to deal with 300.
That's right.
Then Chris Dorsey sitting out there looking like and what they want to do is they want to paint a picture that he's a maniac, he's a lunatic. See, whenever you stand against this government, you're crazy.
Yeah. Right.
That's what they do with me. All of the preachers tell their members, Chris, this is no lie. A lot of them, they tell them, don't listen to him. He's crazy. That's what they say about me. Yeah. No, I'm not crazy. You're crazy.
When they say we got all the great angry black men over here.
Go against the grain.
And then,
simple as that.
President said it, one thing they say about this station is we have the angry black man. Let me clear something up with y'all. The only
Well, we
time
got a
I
white
get
one
angry,
today.
let me say this. We got a white man today, but the only time I get angry is when I'm talking about this issue. In case you people wonder, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I go home, I eat dinner with my wife, my family, we're fine. I'm happy. I really am. I tell you when I'm not. I ain't always been happy. I'm happy, but I'm very unhappy because God has put a burden on my heart, and I don't like to see people. I don't have to talk about this. My grandma begs me. She begged me last week not to talk about this. She said, Sunday night listening to you, you're going to end up getting yourself hurt behind people who don't care nothing about what you're saying, who want darkness. And you know what? From one perspective, she's exactly right. But from another perspective, I was created to do this. And with that being said, Chris needs your support. The cameraman that's standing here today needs your support. He's supporting Chris. Preston Brown, this is what I'm telling you. For those of y'all, I'm not going to turn this into an election thing. This is me speaking. This isn't Chris speaking. This is me. I'm going to say this right now. If nothing else, for those that are going to vote, then you better go vote for Preston. If nothing else, look at it this way. He's not with the machine.
Right.
And he's allowing us to say these things. Since most of you all vote Democrat and don't care what's on the ballot anyway, if you're going to make a stupid vote, if you're going to, then make one at least to go against what has already been done for 20 years and you've seen no results.
That's right.
Pick the odd man out if you're going to make a dumb vote, then pick the guy who hasn't had a chance yet. And that's what I told him about you when you were running for sheriff. You know, I'm not going to just jump back into bed with something that I've been unhappy about for 20 years. Common sense, if you have any, will tell you, try something different and new. So, sister, this is what we got to do. And let me tell you, some of y'all on a lower level, you got some money. Let me tell you something. I have somebody right now. For anybody, and I'm going to bring them here soon. And I haven't told y'all about this yet. Who has access. And Chris, you may be familiar with this. I'm not that familiar with it. And they deal with trust. They're learning trust. And they're finding out that the rich people out here don't operate under the same rules. They don't have money. They just control everything. And there's a difference in actually being rich and having money, which we think we ought to have, and those who are in control. I have a gentleman right now that if somebody want to come and just bap a new radio station right now to give us the right equipment, they can do it. They can write you back. They can give you a tax write-off. And let me tell you something. There's some things they can do under a trust. I'm going to bring those people in the future. And Chris, you may have a better understanding of what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of this that we can do. The first thing we need to do is stop supporting the charlatans. And I love you, mother. I'm going to let you go so I can take some more calls. But part of y'all problem is just me fussing now. Is y'all go back to these same churches on Sundays, and these people empower these politicians.
Oh, yeah.
In 1868, the Constitution was split off immediately. Go back and look up 1868. That's when they started to put in their agenda to take away sovereignty and these different things. 1868, go look it up. That's why they took away what's called a statesman and made a politician. A politician gives policy. And listen to the words. And it's enforced by the police. Those words mean something. Okay? It's not by mistake. Let's go to the phone lines. I need to get some more calls because we got to go home and save something for Tuesday. Caller, you on the air.
Good afternoon, Pastor. How you doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm fine. You know, my head is just spinning. There's just so much good information coming out. There's just so much I want to say. Good afternoon, Mr. Dorsey.
Good afternoon.
And the last time I talked to Mr. Dorsey was during the sheriff's race when I was talking about collusion and complicity. And people keeping their mouths shut when they know violations are taking place. And I haven't had a chance to speak to you since then. But I just want to thank you, Pastor Rob, for having him on the broadcast today. But a couple of things came to mind while y'all were talking. And one thing came to mind was that Mayor Dwight Jones said that he was going to call for an investigation into the funds of the Rock Church when all that stuff was going on with Geronimo Aguilar. Charles Stanley and his constituents wanted an accounting of what the Rock had done with the money that they had gotten from the city. On WTVR.com, the video is still up from May 23rd, 2013, what Dwight Jones said. He will look into an investigation because the people have a right to know what happened to the money, but nobody has said anything about it since then. And I really believe, you know, that there's something fishy going on. Something's not right. And, you know, I don't know if it's a kickback, but somebody got their hand in the cookie jar, but when they follow their money, they'll find out.
Chris?
And then you're talking about bail. I remember reading that Semiramis, who called herself the Queen of Heaven, who's the mother of Nimrod and the mother of Tammuz, when she married Nimrod, her own son, Shem became so angry that he killed Nimrod and chopped his body up into pieces, and they were able to find all his body parts except his penis.
That was Horus too.
And that began then Nimrod became the sun god Baal, and then that started the practice of making erect penises pointing towards the sky.
Which is where you get your church steeples, your monuments.
Your obelisk and...
Obelisk, right.
Mhm.
Similar story with Horus.
Sir?
Oh, I was saying the similar story with Horus being chopped up in
Yeah,
in
it's the
pieces.
same,
Yeah, ISIS.
it's the same paganism behind it.
Can you comment on the rock?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing up the Rock Church and the City of Richmond government, because that can segue into a little something that maybe we can go into detail about next week, and that's trauma-based mind control. And they have these government-connected molestation networks. And as everyone knows, even the cover-up that and the media is nothing but and I hope all the media stations are still listening, including Times Dispatch. They cover up the worst crimes of the government. You know, they'll cover up the 9/11 stuff. They can't avoid saying things like Richmond Social Services is engaged in keeping all sorts of different children in every sort of abusive situation that they can. Now that translates to me is that they are knowingly putting these children into every sort, which includes any sort of trauma-based mind control, which could be physical abuse, and it could mostly be sexual abuse. They put them with known pedophiles like Geronimo Aguilar, who ran a street gang that flies the so-called Israeli flag and has a concert for Israel every year and promotes this BS, nonsense, Satan-worshipping, so-called Christian Zionism. But the thing is, the city police, they're sending the at-risk youth to the Rock Church. The social services they're sending them to the Rock Church. So they're not going to do any investigation that's going to incriminate them. They've been, bankrolling that place. They've been, paying for the buses to pick these people up and drive them to the dirty Rock Church. And another thing about the Rock Church is, myself and other people, they knew what was going on. Silver Persinger at the last council meeting said where the Rock Church was brought up says, "Hey, wasn't this guy Aguilar molesting children?" And then Michelle Mosby responds by saying, "I sent my kids to the Rock Church. Man, look at her. That's some craziness that she's an elected official,
Chris.
even with all the dumb, crooked people that have already been on this city council."
Now, Chris, you ain't gonna believe this. Well, maybe you will. Years ago, I had him on an interview when he first got here, and I told him then, I said, when we find out, I said, what you till you find out that you're doing anything to harm them kids? Because I had an issue as a black man with how I feel like there's a certain agenda anyway that we all are there's all these funds being allocated, given out, distributed for the Rock to pick up these inner city project children, and the parents who are, they're in another world, wherever they are doing whatever they're doing, are sending these kids with no real supervision, no idea what's really going on.
That's right.
And you know what? I came back later and took time to talk about how we needed to have our own programs for our children. So again, you heard it first here on WCLM. We brought you here. Y'all get upset. I told y'all about Eddie long before it happened. I told y'all about all of these things, and they still call me crazy. I think you're crazy for sending your kid. I think you're crazy.
Right.
I think you're crazy for, listen, I told my church something 2 weeks ago. I got a letter, and they read it. We do live letters. I said, and they looked at me like, okay, that's too much. He's going crazy. No, I'm not going crazy. I said, church, as your pastor, I'm going to recommend you believe nothing you see in the media. Anything they tell you on the news, it's a quarter of the truth to a complete lie.
That's right.
And I said, because the news if you go back dig, and I'm going to bring this up next week, you're going to see that these news stations are ran by Masons. They're owned by these Jews and these different folks who are
That's
in
right.
control of the information, and they always listen. I'm finding out, and Chris, this is something I'm careful. What I know, what I don't. But I'm now researching, and I want your input on this to find out that maybe Adolf Hitler is not the person that they told me he was.
That's right.
And I'm scared. Like, I'm almost afraid to say it because I haven't gotten there yet.
Now we're there. Now we're there because this is something that you know, a lot of people. This is pretty in depth, but you know, there's DNA DNA that and there's the Human Genome Project. And what I will say is that the research I've done, and there's plenty of it out there, it not only says that this so-called Ashkenazim, it has no relation to anything Semitic or from the Middle East or descendants of what they call the tribe of Israel, which was actually a person, an individual human to begin with, that this is all just an elaborate scam, and that all of the leaders, the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And that Adolf Hitler, DNA evidence shows that he comes from he was never German. Nobody would ever even say that he was German. He was Austrian, but that he comes from a Jewish background, as do most of the leadership of what they were calling the National Socialists, who formed the current modern state of Israel, and that this was, and that they were not all necessarily, you know, what they would call 100% Jewish. Maybe they were half Jewish, but they were of this bloodline, and that they were running a scam, and that this goes on today with people like, with persons like Vladimir Putin, or the
Bin Laden.
or Bin Laden, or the Saudi royal family, or the so-called British royal family, because, and again, the Catholic Church, you know, what they would call the Marranos, who were like the Borgias, that they were what they would call crypto-Jews that founded the Jesuit order, and that all these modern-day Masonic orders, they are what they would call Judeo-Masonic, and the Illuminati was started by a so-called Catholic priest who was born to Jewish parents on behalf of the Rothschilds, started the Bavarian Illuminati, and that these people are all, like I said, Sabbatean, meaning that they think Sabbatai Zevi was the Jewish Messiah, and that this man named Jacob Frank, who was related by blood to a lot of these individuals in the British royal family, that he was the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, and that they are Talmudists, which is the religion of the unwritten religion of the Jews, of the Pharisees in the Bible, of the Pharisees.
All right. It's all baloney. And when you're talking about the Jews and this front is really what it is, you better go back and look at who wears a yarmulke. Think about this. Who do you, when you think of that yarmulke, that's going to tell you, that's going to give you an indication.
The Catholic Church.
Now, why is that if that's supposed to be a...
They are Talmudists. Because they are, and I will tell you, do a Google search for the term Bill Clinton yarmulke, Barack Obama yarmulke,
yes,
George Bush yarmulke,
yes,
Vladimir Putin yarmulke, and you will find all of these people being led around by the same Lubavitchers, which is another term one needs to be familiar with in order to comprehend geopolitics, and they are leading these individuals around, many who are part of this bloodline, part of this Talmudic bloodline. Bush, certainly, because here's the thing, and people don't comprehend this about America. Man, they were starting these civil wars all over Europe because the real so-called royal families, and they're as real as the other people they deposed before they came because of the migration of humanity, but around a certain time, all European royal houses, and this is documented at the time, so it's nothing new, and it's been documented every generation since then by any number of people, that they infiltrated all of these lines. They did it in North Africa. They do it in Saudi Arabia. They do it everywhere, and it only makes sense. Because who are you going to trust beside your own tribe, your own family members? So what do? Research protocols of the learned elders of Zion. Whether that's a forgery, which some people claim that it's a forgery, I don't know. But what I do know is that that's the strategy of what's happening today, and it was written 100 years ago.
Yes.
And look at the old, look at the Bible. Look at the Bible. You don't even have to look at the Talmud. And you look at the rules on usury. And you look at what, Jesus Christ said about usury. And you'll say, well, wait a second. This is like the Antichrist society. And again, we can go down any different number of paths, and we can say what the word Christ means and all this
Nothing
other
new
stuff.
under
Right.
the sun.
This
Same.
is old stuff. Usury. Usury is it. That's it. It means to inflict and impose unpayable and unreasonable fees and fines. And it applies to human slavery. It applies to even, the idea of people killing themselves for insurance purposes. It's a scam. You're being scammed by scammers. That's it. It's a word scam. It's a scam. We know who these people are. We know who they're killing. We know where they live. We have directly confronted the top levels of these individuals. Now it's time for the militia to do so.
right,
Now it's time for the body of the people to do so.
Save that, Chris. And I'll say this to my callers because 3:30 we out of here. So we got 10, 12, 13 minutes. I want to say this. Save those questions. And I know that the research lady should be ready to bring some stuff. She's great at that by next Tuesday. Because I also want to talk about what's going on with the high definition television, the digital TV. Nobody's talking about that. Why they want chemtrails. I had a natural doctor come in my church. I had a natural
I want to
doctor.
make one more comment before I hang up.
Okay.
If you don't mind. And I didn't mean to cut across you, but I know somebody else wants to talk to you. But y'all were talking about not having ownership of property. And then a lot of people don't understand there's a law called eminent domain.
Okay.
Where they can come in, and it used to be they said where they could take your property for what they call public use. But now it's escalated to the point they can take it for redevelopment or anything that they want to take it to.
Special use
Money,
permit is
usury.
what the city
It's the
does.
same thing again.
Yeah.
And if you don't want them to do it, they can do execute what's called condemnation law. They can take it from you anyway.
Because it's not yours.
That's right.
No one owns
ours.
anything.
It's not ours.
You
That's
just
right.
have equitable trust, just interest.
Right, that's
Equitable
right. You
interest,
don't
and that's
own
it.
it. You do not own it. And if you say, well, I don't want you to take my house for this highway, well, they'll take it from you anyway.
Right, and what they say, it violates what this is a common law land. One thing that the British did give us that is I think is good is that this is common law, and common law means that man is supreme and his rights are given from God. God creates man, then man creates the government. So under common law, anything that is the fruits of one's labor is their property. Children, that's the property of the parents. Anything anybody works for, that is their property. And all these eminent domain statutes and codes, they violate the law of the land. We're on the land. I'm not walking on water. I'm certainly not.
And that's why we
right.
got to come back next week to talk about the differences of law of land and water, which is really to me it boils down to why we're fussing about who the Constitution. Thank you so much, sister.
Okay,
Thank you. She's been a long time supporter, but of the Constitution versus all these different things.
Right.
When you talked about your children, let me tell you, you don't even own your children. When you have babies, the first thing they do is you sign as an informer.
Right.
You sign that birth
But that's a
certificate.
violation of the law.
But they do it. And they do it because of the ignorance of the people. And that's why they can come back and take your children and say, what happens when you go to court and you decide, I'm not going to plead? then they said they can plead for you. You know
Yeah.
why? Because you're what's called a ward of the state. Well, you didn't understand what a ward of the state means. They own you. You belong to them.
That's what they say. But again,
Right.
if you change the form of the court, if you say where are you getting your authority,
Right.
if you say, and they're going to incriminate themselves at that point, unless they're going to tell the truth. And if they do tell the truth, then you just change the form of the court and you tell them you're an Israelite under the law. And I have backing and proof that verifies that. And if somebody challenges that, under Talmudic law, that's not one thing that one would like to do. If they're a true priest of Baal, they wouldn't want to mess with something like that. But what I'm saying is, people have to stand their ground. The people, the top enforcement arm, the individuals that ordain government. What does ordain mean? It doesn't mean you're under the auspices and under the thumb of the government. It means you ordain it. It's something spiritual that the people create, because God creates people and the people create the government. It's very, very simple.
Let's go to the phone lines, Chris, because we got 5 minutes here.
And I got
want
one
us to
question, too.
Presley got a question, so we're going to make time for that, since it's making time for us. So please, call me up. If you're enjoying this, let's spend the next few minutes taking calls. 804-231-7685. Again, that's 804-231-7685 is the live studio number. Call us. You're talking to Chris Dorsey today. And I can't wait till next Tuesday because I can't have this conversation with a lot of people. But when I can have a conversation, I can get from him and not just I'm learning and I'm with man, this is beautiful. And I want to just applaud again everyone that's listening. If you're out there, don't just sit there. Get on the phones. Get on the phone, because I'll shut it down and just say, hey, we're not going to do it again. I'm serious. I get frustrated sometimes. I really do. And I just say, to hell with it. And that's because you people need to start. The least you can do is pick up the phone today and say, I enjoyed this joke. I don't have $1 today, but I enjoy it. I want you to keep going. I'm listening. And you don't know how that's encouraging to people to even know that somebody cares. Somebody cares about more than the ball game. Somebody cares more than about Beyonce or twerking or whatever else stupid out there that can be said. Somebody cares more than what's going on in the media. I'm telling you, we got to wake up. Somebody cares more than what's going on in your church. Church is like the biggest distraction. They use the church. That's why your church is separated in denominations. It's separated in denominations because church is under admiralty, maritime admiralty as well. And that's how they get you. And that's why these preachers are getting. When you look at Joel Osteen and T.D. Jakes and these different people, they're on the meat. They're taking mass media by storm because they have been allowed to. They have been permitted to. And they're distracting you by entertaining you to keep you from thinking. That's why, what do they always tell you? And the phone lines are open at 804-231-7685. They always tell you never discuss what? Religion and politics, because it's rude. Because they're afraid that we might start to think.
Yeah,
that's right.
all it is.
Because those are important things to ponder, and everything else are niceties.
Right.
I mean, think about this, and talk about like blasphemy and all this other stuff. And I'm guilty of this. I'm a former Redskins season ticket holder. I used to.
I'm a big
booze up.
Redskins fan.
But I must say, what do they call football? They call it pigskin. They toss it around on Saturday and Sunday, and it says in the Bible, don't even touch a pigskin.
Yeah.
What's everybody do? Gorge themselves with pork as they're watching this on Saturday and Sunday, the days of the Lord, the Sabbath and the day of the Lord. So again, and again, when people get distracted by this, look at how every play begins and ends in football. It's pretty much, latently homosexual as well.
Right.
So I'm saying, like, this is how we entertain one another, and when you watch the game, it's nothing but a propaganda piece for the United States military who commit treachery and treason against the United States people and the American people and the U.S. Constitution. It's a big propaganda thing, and it's not really that cool. I prefer
Which, by the
baseball.
way, I believe that sports, and I'm a big football fan, but which, by the way, you mentioned baseball, but you better wake up and look at these sports, because these sporting events are, I believe, and this is my belief, are linked mixed as well with the government. And let me tell you, when you look at baseball is a Masonic sport.
It is completely a Masonic
Because
sport.
the diamond or that shape is that G, and if you look at how the bases are spaced,
That's right.
all the numeric values
It's
of the
Masonic.
bases, it's all Masonic.
Abner Doubleday, look into him. Abner Doubleday, Mason. I don't think he necessarily invented baseball, but
Right.
it's definitely a
So
Masonic.
they're behind it 3 innings. I mean, they're 9 innings,
9
and then there are 3 out, 3 strikes. You're out. Go back and look at
3
Masonic.
outs, yeah.
Masonic terminology. The hits, the rock, the
Right, okay.
stone, and that's why when you go to a boxing match, another sporting event, the boxing ring is supposed to be a ring, but it's in a square. And that's a Masonic term for squaring the circle.
That's right.
And that's why
On the
they have
square.
on the square, and that's why
Right.
they call it rounds. You fight for rounds.
Yeah,
round
yeah,
one,
that's right.
Even though it's in a square. All of this is not coincidental. It's time that we wake up. It has a meaning.
It's hypnotic. It's definitely it puts one under a spell.
I also want to talk about these next week.
Oh, yeah.
We got 1 minute because they already have proven that this is full of cancer radiation.
Right.
They're popping popcorn on the cell phone now. You know, you can put a kernel on there. It'll pop from the radiation or whatever.
And here's another thing. We'll bring this back to the city of Richmond. There are these death towers, and there's one in my neighborhood, and it sits in the. We'll talk about it since it's baseball. It sits in the outfield of the little sandlot at Westover Hills Elementary School.
Right.
And again, there is, I forget the lady. I think her name is Lawson. I saw her on television saying that they want to rent out space at these schools, Richmond City schools, to put these cell phone towers up.
Wow.
That they would get $20,000 a year, man. That is, and it affects children more than it does adults. So why are they doing this? Why are they putting all these cell phone towers up? Look into the smart meters. Look into how HARP operates, which is now they've moved on to call it something else.
I got on the radio and told them about HARP years ago, and they told me I'm crazy. Right here on this station, they told me
are liars or
crazy.
stupid then.
They get so mad with me. Can't nobody control the weather. God control. I mean, it's foolish. Why do you
They've been doing it since before these people who said they can't control it were even born.
That's what I'm saying.
They have been cloud seeding since the late 1930s. It's okay.